Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms Cam & Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm joined by Stephen Gutowski of the Washington Free Beacon. We are coming to you from the Sands Convention Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, where SHOT Show 2020 is officially underway. Both Stephen and I missed range day at SHOT Show yesterday, but you know what? I'm okay with that.
I'm not okay with it. I mean, there was a more important thing happening, so we had to miss it.
It's sad that we missed, but I'm okay with where we were yesterday because that was an incredible event in Richmond. And before we talk about SHOT Show, let's talk about Lobby Day in Richmond yesterday because you were down there as well. What were your impressions of what you saw?
You know, I was actually very impressed by the turnout. It's probably the biggest event that Richmond has seen in, I don't know, decades, I would think, in terms of like a political event. And it's certainly one of the largest I've ever been to. I mean, it's hard to, when you're on the ground, it's hard to say exactly how many people are there. I don't want to give like an estimate. When you're in the middle of it, right. But it certainly was tens of thousands. Yeah. And it felt, you know, I've been to big events before. I was at the March for Our Lives in D.C. I was at Glenn Beck's rally years ago and Jon Stewart's rally and the Eagles Super Bowl parade. I was at that too. And you know, when you're packed in with a group of people, that was the kind of atmosphere it had as far as turnout. Yeah. So it was very impressive. I mean, especially
considering the fact that, you know, so many people were trying to tamp down turnout and stay home. Everybody stay home. Yeah. You know, the fact that we had, I think the estimate that I've seen is at least 30,000, and that seems about right to me.
It felt like more to me. I don't, but again, it's hard to say from the ground.
Right.
Exactly how. I mean, you know, because I went all. I don't know where you went, but I was on the Capitol grounds. I'm sure you probably.
I'll
went
tell you
all
exactly
over.
where I went. I got to the Capitol grounds at about 8 o'clock, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just go in because I got to speak, so I got to go in at some point. And I was getting ready to go through the magnetometer, and I was like, oh, shoot. I've got stuff in my pockets that they're going to make me get rid of. I got like a lighter, and I was like, okay, I got to go all the way back to my car, drop that stuff off, go through the line again. So I did get to go up 9th Street a couple of times, right, and through the crowd before I got into the Capitol grounds.
So I mean, we went. That crowd extended basically all around the Capitol, right? So there was the Capitol grounds where people had, that was the gun-free zone essentially. Right. You had to go through the metal detectors to get in. And we went in there, and that's probably the smallest of the crowds there, just because you had to wait in line, you had to go through all the security. Right. Although it did get pretty large once the speakers started.
By the time 11 o'clock rolled around, it was. I don't know how many. They were going to cut it off around 10,000.
Yeah, it was probably around there. Yeah. I would think by the time, but when the speeches actually happened.
Right. Then you had thousands of people outside of it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, so on the street right next to the Capitol, I think it was 9th Street, like you said, that was packed to the brim, sidewalk to sidewalk for like 3 or 4 blocks, and then also another side road extended off, also packed for another block, and then right by the Pocahontas building, the actual where the legislators meet. First of all, there was a huge line of people waiting to get into that in the morning to go and actually lobby, because that was the purpose of the day. It's kind of funny because like this is a thing, this is an event that they have every year, and normally it's like 1,000 people come to it. Exactly. And they literally are there to actually go and lobby and meet with their lawmakers, which is what the NRA did last week, right? Yep. And had a very big crowd for that, but probably 2,000 plus for that. But when you have tens of thousands of people, it's not practical for them all to go and actually meet with their lawmakers. So this event was different. You had lots of people go and do that, but then you had tens of thousands more waiting outside in the rally area. And then, so around the Pocahontas building, there was probably another 2 or 3 blocks of people packed in, you know, to the brim for that. So yeah, I mean, I would put it on the higher end of the estimates that are out there. Because I would think it was definitely more than 20,000 or 30,000. I think it was higher.
And, you know, again, I'm not a crowd size expert, and it was hard to tell because the buildings. So where the speakers was sort of right in front of the Capitol steps.
Yeah, and you couldn't really see the other. You couldn't see the other road that was packed with people from the Capitol steps. You could see right in front.
Right, but there were big buildings that were blocking where I think a lot of the crowd was.
Yeah, any one camera angle is not going to show you the full crowd that was there. You'd have we have video coming out. Range Time, another episode of my show, should be out today on, I think, Tuesday. So that has a bunch of shots from all over. That should give people a pretty good idea of how big the crowd was. Yeah. And how you can see it's all in different areas it was packed in. So
And honestly,
the crowd was huge. I think that's what the bottom line.
It was amazing. And honestly, for the speakers, we couldn't actually see the crowd because where we were, there was a podium, and then right in front of us, there were just press. So I could hear the crowd, but I couldn't even see the people who were like 10 feet away because there was just this wall of media. But I did like the chants, and I did ask Virginians to make some noise, and they did, and that was amazing. And again, you know, I've heard a lot of people say, well, see, Governor Ralph Northam was wrong. There was no threat. I'm not going to say that. I mean, you know, I've heard folks who I trust who were genuinely concerned about the potential for violence. I am so glad that it did not happen. And I think, honestly, from the moment that you set foot in downtown Richmond, it was easy to tell that everybody there was there for that legitimate purpose. There was you know, there wasn't a huge contingent, or even honestly, I did not see a single person that maybe go, uh-oh, this guy's raising my alarm flags.
No. And you know, what I would say about it is how it went yesterday, in that it was very big and very peaceful. It was bigger than I expected, to be honest, but it was about as peaceful as I expected it to be. Because the fact is, we've had over 100 of these types of events in Virginia over the last 2 months without a single incident of violence or arrests even.
Exactly.
So I mean, I wasn't expecting violence. I will say, like you, that I'm not upset that the police took extra precautions. I'm not saying that anyone who was concerned is like totally wrong and making it up or anything like that. You know, obviously you do have extremists out there online who make threats and say things, and you might say, well, they're probably not going to do that, but it's better to be cautious oftentimes.
But what do you make of the governor afterwards saying, well, you know, thanks to our police and de-escalation? You know,
look,
bullshit.
the police did a good job.
I think it's the first time I've actually used that word on the show, but baloney. The police did a good job, but so did gun owners. And the fact that Ralph Northam still cannot acknowledge that the people who showed up there on Monday were peaceful, passionate Virginia residents who were you know, out there to support their rights. Northam just keeps blowing it. I mean,
you know, like I said, police did a good job. Police were very respectful. There was no confrontations. Nobody was agitating the police, or vice versa. And so there's no blame to be left on the police or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't think the police presence is the reason why people weren't violent. I mean, that gun-free zone, honestly, like I went into it, you went into it, that is, if you're concerned about some crazy person or a group of crazy people coming to shoot up the event, that's probably the worst possible thing you could do, because it basically just funneled everyone into one area, and there's only one entrance and exit, so you're creating this choke point.
And not only that, but surrounding that whole area are there, but are places where people are.
And it's just like, to me, it was just like, if I'm taking the governor at his word, and I would like to do that, I just don't see how that tactic was something that was going to stop what was feared, you know, out-of-state radicals coming in to attack people, or the police or the legislatures. Because, like, how does that gun-free zone on the grounds, like, how does that protect anything? Like, it just didn't do anything, practically, in my mind, having been there. And so the reason it wasn't violent is because there weren't extremist violent people there. That's the thing. Like, there were lots of people carrying guns there. You know, yes, the Capitol grounds were a gun-free zone, but everything else wasn't, and there were thousands of people carrying.
I mean, you had 14 acres that was, you know, fenced off and was a gun-free zone.
Everything
and
else
you had hundreds of acres, you know, surrounding the Capitol where there were.
That's the other reason why that didn't make any sense to do that, because it's like, well, all right, so the people who want to be armed could still be legally armed. They just have to be outside of the Capitol grounds, and that's exactly what everyone did. And there was no problem. They were all peaceful. No one caused any issues. So, like, it worked out fine, but it worked out fine because the people who were coming to the event had no intention of causing problems, had no intention of violence. And so that's why they had an intention of making a political showing, of sending a message like, we're here, we don't want you to pass these bills that we oppose, and we'll vote you out, and we'll defend ourselves, you know, in some far-flung scenario. But, like, the reality is they were there to say, don't vote for these bills. We're Virginians. We don't want you to pass these laws.
Right. How many folks did you have a chance to actually talk to yesterday?
Oh, probably a dozen or so. I mean, we interviewed probably about a dozen.
Yeah.
And talked to more. And none of them were like no one was making any threats of violence or anything like that.
I wouldn't even describe the mood yesterday as angry.
Oh no, that's the other thing too. It was much more of a jovial mood.
Yeah.
I thought like people were happy. People were handing out snacks to each other. Mm-hmm. There were petitions. People were basically engaging in the political process, which is what the point of the event was.
Well, I mean,
there
if you
was
think about it,
voter registration, all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, it wasn't an angry atmosphere.
You go back to you said that there'd been 140 some odd meetings where we've seen no violence, no threats, nothing like that.
That's why I didn't expect it.
Right, but all of those are like these really hyper-local events, right? And if you think about it,
many of them
yesterday
drew
was
thousands of people too.
Absolutely, but yesterday, to me, one of the reasons why I think there was such a jovial mood in the face of these gun control bills is yesterday was the first time all of these people who are driving the Second Amendment sanctuary movement had a chance to meet each other. Yeah. Right, it was almost like a family reunion in a way. Or maybe like a what do you call it when a bunch of Cub Scout packs get together? Is it
a meetup?
I guess I don't know.
But that's
sort of what it was, right? I mean, it was the opportunity. It really was the first opportunity, I think, for a lot of these individuals to see one another. We've been cheering each other on from afar, like, yay, go Carroll County, yay, go Campbell County. But this was the first time you got to look around, talk to the person next to you. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from Wise County. Oh, that's awesome. What'd you guys do? And so I think that this was, it was almost the culmination or maybe the close of one chapter of this fight, but I think it's also the beginning of the next phase of the Second Amendment sanctuary movement.
Yeah, I mean the thing about where we go, where the movement goes from here is you've had all the sanctuaries passed. There's 135 now in Virginia. You've had 2 lobby days now that have only increased in attendance. Especially compared to the Moms Demand Action Lobby Day, which had 200 people show up.
And of course, their excuse now is, well, we won the election, so we don't need to show up.
Which, fair enough, I guess. I mean, that's not really how politics works.
Right.
You won the election, but a lot of these people they weren't running on the more extreme versions of these bills out there. They might have run on universal background checks or something. And that will probably still pass even regardless of all this stuff. You'll probably still get so they're right to an extent, to be fair to them. You'll probably still get universal background checks of some form, although they have even moderated that already because of the pressure. Yep. You'll probably get some form of red flag law, although that's still in limbo. The Senate has not passed it, and that was the number one thing yesterday from the people that we talked to. That they were most opposed to the red flag bill, and the version in front of the Senate right now is pretty expansive. It's much more expansive than many other states.
Yeah.
There's no restrictions on who can apply for one. There's no repercussions if you lie.
Which is a change, by the way, because the original SB 240 that was introduced left it to law enforcement. Right. And again, when it was up in committee, it was basically changed line by line for the substitute bill that, you're right, from what I'm hearing, does not have the votes in the state Senate.
But I think that's why, which I think is true, because it's you saw the 3 bills: the universal background check, the
one gun a month,
with the exception for concealed carry,
right?
So that's a moderation as well, and then also the ability for localities to restrict, to basically create their own gun-free zones in government buildings and at permitted events
which includes gun shows.
Yeah,
as they said, and it also allows municipalities to sue or localities to sue gun manufacturers.
There's that too.
Those are the 3 that have passed out of the Senate. And you're right.
Those 3 passed right away.
Yep.
And the universal background check had 2 Republican votes even. But the red flag bill, which was part of the 4 that made it through committee during the NRA lobby day, that did not pass immediately, and that got passed over twice more last week.
Yep.
Because there's a bunch of amendments they want to hear to it, because they're not the votes to pass it.
Right.
And so I think that tells you a lot about the actual political situation and how much of an impact the protests have had, or the rallies, the sanctuary movement have had, because if they can't pass a red flag bill, which is still polling-wise, at least in concept, a very popular proposal in Virginia and the United States, if they can't pass that, I don't think they can pass an assault weapons ban of any form, frankly. It's not impossible, but just judging off of how things have gone thus far.
I think you're right.
There's been a big impact.
But I think part of it is, they campaigned on common sense gun safety measures, But then you look at the bills, there's nothing common sense about something like House Bill 961, which would turn, almost every Virginia gun owner into a felon for keeping the magazines that they currently possess,
correct.
right?
Yes.
So I don't think this is what Virginians voted for in November.
And this is not what Democrats ran on either. They ran on, maybe, like I was saying, maybe universal background checks, maybe red flag bills were mentioned in these, because I did a piece before the election, if you recall, where I reached out to all the top 17 Democratic campaigns that were getting money from the gun control groups and outside donors, and I asked them if they supported Northam's gun confiscation bill, which was part of, because Northam had been pushing that for a year.
Yeah.
There was an assault weapons ban that had a total ban on possession, regardless of whether you already owned it. That was in his package a year ago, and he's been pushing that the whole time. But these people did not run on it. There was no mention of it on their websites, and they did not respond to requests for comment asking about their position on it. So they did not run on that. Also, the gun control groups aren't necessarily even pushing that one. If you look at what they say their priorities are,
right.
But if you going through all their websites, you could see you'd get a mention of gun safety, and it would maybe be universal background checks, and a couple of them would have red flag bills, and that was it basically. And so what they ran on is not necessarily what some of these bills coming through the legislature are. Yeah. And I think that gives a lot of them pause, I would think.
Well, I suspect you're right, and I hope that
especially after everything that we've seen.
After everything we've seen, and as long as those gun owners who showed up at the Capitol on Monday continue to call and email and stay in touch with their lawmakers and keep up the pressure.
Yeah. Because if the pressure just dissipates after yesterday, then I don't know if that'll be enough.
Right.
You got it. That's how politics works, right? You have to. What matters are that the constituents are talking to their law. I mean, this is basic democracy, right? Mm-hmm. This is what matters. If Virginians talk to their lawmakers, especially in areas, especially Democratic lawmakers, that's what will have the ultimate impact. Modest action could say all day long that, we won the election, but it's democracy is also going and talking, lobbying your lawmakers as a constituent, which is exactly what we're seeing from the gun rights side of things right now. And we're not seeing that at all from the gun control side.
Not publicly.
Like I said, 200 people showed up for their lobby day. Right. 2,000 showed up for the NRAs, and then, 50,000 showed up yesterday.
Right? Yeah, not publicly are they advocating, but I think they are still doing a lot of behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, the groups are still active, of course, but I just think that there's a big money disadvantage we've seen in the last election between the gun control side and the gun rights side. The gun control side had a huge money advantage, but there's still a huge advantage for the gun rights side on the grassroots level in Virginia. That's just objectively anyone looking at the situation can tell you that.
Yeah.
The gun control people have not been able to organize 135 localities to pass a resolution that they want, and the gun control side has not been able to turn out more than 200 people at their lobby events.
Right.
So it's just objectively, grassroots-wise, the gun rights side in Virginia is much more animated by several times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we won't see a lot of gun control advocates here at SHOT Show this week either, I don't think. But I'm curious, have you had a chance to walk any of the floor at all? I literally just got here into the press room. I saw Steven. I said, Steven, you're going to be my guest on Can the Company today. So I've not yet been inside.
I have not been inside yet because we got in at like 9:30 last night, Vegas time, which is like midnight Eastern time after doing the whole rally day, then driving back up to D.C. like you did, and then flying 7 hours. And then I walked the Strip at 7 in the morning, which is probably one of the most depressing things you could do. The Strip is just nasty early in the morning in Vegas. It's all like the degenerates from last night still wobbling down the street, homeless people. And then even worse, like morning people running, and that's even. I
saw terrible. A number of joggers
like
on
the Strip. 3 morning people in Vegas, and they all run on the Strip. But and it smells like onion rings for some reason. It's like, what is happening? Where am I?
Setting a really good tone for SHOT Show.
The Strip at night is magical. The Strip in the morning is not. But I mean, I'm expecting this to be probably the biggest SHOT Show yet. I mean, it's kind of like that every year, right? They get a little bit. They always up themselves just a little bit. There's There's a few more guns, a few more interesting little innovations.
Did you see this
and that's what I'm
preview
looking
piece
forward
by
to.
the Associated Press? I think it was Lisa Marie Payne wrote this piece about amid slumping sales, the gun industry
I
meets.
like Lisa Marie Payne.
I do too. Generally, I think she's fair. You know, she's pretty fair, but we just have the second highest, number of NICS checks on record. I know that doesn't translate directly to sales.
Yeah.
But
well,
I don't know that I would necessarily.
Well, how's the industry doing? I don't. Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as.
No, I don't
in
think
a
so.
Slump at the
I don't
moment.
think that's accurate. Yeah, to be honest, I don't think it's accurate to say that it's in a slump at this point. Maybe a couple years ago you could say that. Now, I mean, we did have the second most NICS checks, although that's raw checks, and those numbers have really started to diverge from. This is one of the reasons why I stopped writing about raw NICS numbers, because a lot more states have started doing rechecks of their permits every month, and so that adds several 100,000 false permit checks instead of gun checks.
Okay.
And so I'll use NSSF puts out their estimates. And
right.
There's a couple groups that do it, but even by their estimates, it's not second most ever, but it's still better than last year and better than the year before. So I wouldn't say that the industry is in a slump.
Right.
By
If
any
it's
means.
growing.
Yes,
Typically, you're not slumping.
Plus, a slump, the Trump slump or whatever you want to call it. Yes, sales were down from their peaks in 2016.
Right.
But they were still at historical highs.
Yeah.
They were still above anything before 2012. And, which, if you look at the history of NICS checks over time, even when we were down, we did have a bit of a downturn in the industry. It was still very high for this for what it's been in the past. I mean, you're still getting million plus every month.
Right.
So,
and I expect that that with this being an election year, we'll likely see a similar
especially
curve.
because of the politics we've seen from Democrats. For whatever reason, they've decided that for years there was sort of a consensus even among Democrats that going hard on gun control was not electoral success for them. And for whatever reason, over the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years maybe, they've slowly begun to flip that around. And now,
I think a lot of it has to do with the money that Bloomberg is giving these politicians, honestly.
Yeah, he has spent over $100 million on gun control efforts over the last decade, so it's probably part of that. But you've seen Beto, obviously, is the obvious example, but even before that, Hillary Clinton was far more aggressive on gun control than
Beto.
Obama was.
I'm not going to strip down entirely,
but
I
what's happening? We are in
my
Vegas.
Beto is a furry T-shirt, so there you go.
Oh gosh.
And Beto's a furry, but he's not a candidate for president anymore. I mean,
not anymore, but that's why.
Right, well, exactly, but that's the thing. I mean,
to be fair, that's probably not why. It just was he was already he was already failing, and he flailed and tried to do this to get attention. It didn't work.
That's the thing. It didn't help him. It didn't help Swalwell. It didn't help Booker.
That's why a lot of it's a little bit confusing to me to watch Democrats go all in on this stuff when there's really no proof that it electorally that it actually works for them, even in a Democratic primary.
I know.
If hardcore gun confiscation is what even Democratic primary voters wanted, then Beto would have had success doing that.
I suspect it's I know, and I suspect it's because gun control is an important issue for that base.
Sure,
but it's probably not the most important issue. I think it really is probably. I mean, honestly, at this point, I think it comes down to I think it's going to come down to electability. I think that's why Biden still maintains the lead, is because he's seen as the most electable of the Democrats, and the number one priority for Democrats is beating Trump. Yeah. I don't even think it's about a specific policy. I think they'll figure that out if they get elected.
I think that's right. I think that's probably right for most primary voters. Right? That's why Biden leads.
Yeah.
Biden hasn't been spending anywhere near as much as most of the other candidates, including the crazy spenders in Steyer and Bloomberg, spending $100 million each already.
So is this going to be something that you're asking folks in the industry about this week, about the election this year, and what they think the impact will be on the industry itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll probably talk a little bit more about Virginia too, because that's really, we're a little bit biased because we're from there, so it has more of an effect on us. But honestly, that's the hotbed for the gun debate right now in the United States. That just is. I mean, there's nothing happening at the federal level. There's not much happening in the rest of the states at this point. Virginia's where everything's happening. I mean, and you have bills that really do affect the industry as well quite a bit. I mean, their new assault weapons ban proposal which you alluded to earlier, would outlaw the possession of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds and totally outlaw silencers, which obviously has an effect on the and it would ban the new sales of assault weapons, AR-15s and such, firearms which are extremely popular and one of the cornerstones of the industry. So I think that NSSF and the other members of the industry have a lot at stake in Virginia too. So
yeah, I think you're right. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you sitting down with us. We'll let you get back to work because I know you got to do your own stuff. But it was great seeing you.
I will say that since I didn't get to go to range time, or I didn't get to range day, I am going to go shoot some machine guns on the strip today. So,
are you?
Yeah, you're welcome to come with me. If
oh, excellent. All right,
we're going to probably head over to Battlefield Vegas and shoot the minigun, I think.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll try to work on a timing for that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. Steve Gutowski with the Washington Free Beacon. Make sure you're reading Steven's stuff. Check out his range time videos as well on YouTube. And Steven, enjoy your days here at SHOT Show.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, and we will have more coverage from SHOT Show 2020 at BarronArms.com and here on Cam & Company throughout the week. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you here soon with another edition of Barron Arms, Cam & Company.